Welcome to the Villain Arc podcast with your co-hosts Adze and me, Dvovsky. We are joined today by our guest, Kouryuu, also goes by John. Would you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you all for having me and inviting me on to join you on the podcast. I am, like you said, Kouryuu, John Pickett. I have been working with MangaGamer for, oh boy, 14 years now? Since 2009, basically. And at this point, I've basically kind of done it all in a sense between like I started as a translator, very quickly became head translator, as well as the head marketer. Now we have other people on our marketing team, so I focus a little bit more on the PR side, interacting with press as the PR director. I also do project management, and I also work directly with our uh, managers, advising them and consulting with them on some of the bigger business decisions as well. And in addition to the work I do for MangaGamer, I also do translation of anime for Crunchyroll.
Yeah, and I've been looking at like the at the whole like back catalog of like works. I see everything from like Kobayashi Dragon Maid, and then to like Fate Khalid Liner Prisma,
Yes.
and then going to visual novels like Come On Bukaki Ranch.
Oh my God, Bukake Ranch was that was just fun to work on. It was so stupid. It's one of Soft House Steel's games, so it's very short. There's maybe 16, 20 H scenes in the game, but it's an item gathering, item synthesis game. So there's a decent amount of it that was just translating item names, and it would all be stuff like labial oysters and pussy lake and penis shrooms or like harpy down, and just putting together all the stupid terms for all the things that you would have to collect and gather together, because it's like eventually your sort of goal that you're assigned in the game of Bukake Ranch by the Demon Queen is to craft the legendary slut stone for her so that she can have big breasts. Obviously, it's a pun on the Philosopher's Stone because the farmer you play knows a bit of alchemy, and you can also, or you can like choose to instead try to class the lustaments that will lead to Aeromageddon. It was just so many stupid bad puns.
It's and then there's next on the catalog you have like Maggot Baits, and it's like the variation is just amazing. But yeah, come on, Bukaki Ranch. Beer elementals into wet, horny girls. Sounds amazing.
The title sells it. I swear to you, at every convention, the title alone moves that off the shelf.
Yeah, I can
I
imagine.
very nearly played it in preparation for this today. I just couldn't find the time, honestly.
Yeah, it sounds like a masterpiece work, probably one of the greatest of all time. Going into translating and all of that, how do you how did you start, getting into translating, and like what got you to like work on all of these varied works like Come on Bukaki Ranch?
Oof. So, the start of my story, my career trajectory, actually basically goes all the way back to when I was a like freshman, sophomore in college. I When I started out, I was not a Japanese major or a language major or a linguistics major at all. I was actually majoring in pre-vet at the local state university, and I was doing pretty well in my classes for the most part. Agricultural economics, I got a C in that because the professor was one of those that spoke with a monotone for the entire lecture. And of course, it was economics about how the government subsidizes different crops. It was the most boring thing I've ever sat through. But so that was one mark on my GPA, and then I took animal anatomy, and the very first test that we had for that first exam we had for that class, we had to be able to basically write down and identify every bone, every muscle for like cats, dogs, cows, horses, pigs, chickens, and be able to do the same with live, I say live, but obviously not a live, samples in the lab where you would dissect them and sort of like, yes, this is this muscle, this is this muscle. And and when the teacher posted the grades and the range of the grades on the blackboard after that first exam, I decided it was a good idea not to speak up and correct her and tell her that she was quite wrong. The lowest grade was not what she wrote on the board. It was the grade on my test paper. And for those of who are not familiar with the pre-vet field, trying to get into vet school is extremely competitive, and you basically have to have a 4.0 GPA to get in anywhere that's decent. So that killed that plan. I had to drop animal anatomy and immediately start trying to find and choose a completely different major. Now, obviously, I'd always liked anime, I'd always liked video games, and so even while I was taking my courses for pre-vet, since I had a lot of AP credits and some room in my course schedule, I had taken Japanese because I wanted to be able to learn it so I could enjoy like the games, anime, and that kind of entertainment in the native language. And I was doing really well in those classes and I enjoyed it. And honestly, I was doing a lot better than most of my colleagues in those classes. The Japanese courses at the university, they weeded people out exponentially. Like the 100 courses, we started with like 8 classes of 30 in the 100 level. At the 200 level, it was down to 4 classes of 20. By the 300 level, there were 2 classes of 10. So after failing anatomy and doing sort of some soul searching, I decided to take a shot and try to go into make Japanese my major, aim for becoming a translator. At the time, I thought my prospects would be nice. I did a little bit of research on like what translators can earn, and the numbers that I Googled look nice. They're very inaccurate for what this industry actually pays. But so, I thought I would be fine and be able to make a decent amount of money becoming a translator. So I went with it. I did my 4 years of college. I did a year studying abroad in Japan at Kouryuu University as part of the school's exchange program. And so that was how I got my sort of skills and my qualifications during my senior year of college, my final year of college. I studied using some materials that I bought while I was in Japan so that I could pass the JLPT1 exam and get that certification so that I would at least have a chance when I applied to different companies. And I only barely passed that test because the day of the exam, I was driving into the test center in DC and someone hit my car. And so I just barely made it to the test site. And of course, I only hold the JLPT once, maybe twice a year. So if I didn't make it that day, I came into that test in a complete anxious panic. And but I passed. I barely managed to, and I did pass. And so it was after that, after I graduated, after I got my qualifications, I started to apply to different companies to see if I could find a place willing to accept me as a translator. My original goal was to actually do translation for console games, video games. I applied to like Bandai, Nice America, all the sort of well-known companies. Most of their websites had requirements like you must live in California, which I live in Maryland, close to the DC area. So that was, I didn't meet that requirement. Pretty much every company I applied to never responded to me. I never heard back from any of them. I eventually even I eventually kind of caved. I put in an application with the federal government since, close to DC, there's at least, I hope there would be a chance for a decent amount of chance for getting like a position translating with the government, but I don't. I got at least I got the response that sent me to their test, but I never heard back from them after I took their translator test. I assume they would just probably fill up with people that knows Japanese because it's an allied nation, not a enemy nation that's in high demand. Prospects were looking pretty grim at that point. I had also sent an application with my resume and my qualifications to Peter Payne over at JAST, and I did eventually hear back from him, like 4 months after I put my application, which was after I'd finally gotten my job at MangaGamer, to be like, "We're sorry, we don't have a position available." So that was that was a thing. And then so it was pretty grim. I was pretty lost, pretty confused, didn't know what I was gonna do. I was debating like trying to join the military or something to just be able to earn a living. But that was when I had noticed, because I was a very frequent visitor of several of the big visual novel forums that existed back then, which are basically not a thing anymore. But on those forums, I had noticed, talk about this company, MangaGamer. It had sprung up during my final year of college. Was pretty much when they had announced themselves. I think around August of that year, around August of my last year of college, and so people were talking about them because they came out of on the forums. People were talking about them because they came out of nowhere with some pretty good titles like Da Capo and Suika and Kira Kira from Overdrive. So it was pretty clear that this was actually like the companies in Japan trying to do something, and as understandable, since with the forums at the time, people were talking about the translation quality. There's a lot of skepticism about them because the quality was poor. But since I was kind of following the MangaGamer from those forums, I had saw when they basically put up a help wanted ad on their website asking for someone to help out at their booth at Otakon. Otakon being the major anime convention over here, used to be held at Baltimore, now it's held at DC, but at the time it was Baltimore, which is fairly close to where I live. So I emailed them back saying, "Hey, I'm interested in this position. You guys mind if I come out and work for you for the weekend?" I heard back from them instantly. They were in a serious pinch. They had basically no one to work the booth other than one person. And so, I did it before Otakon came. I brushed up on, the titles that they had on the website so that I could at least know enough to try and pitch them to, the con goers that would be walking by the booth, since they were talking about planning to hand out, flyers and demo discs to try and get people to become more aware that the company existed. And so I did that preparation, and I went there, and sort of also in addition to sort of all that, through the forums, there were rumors that MangaGamer had made a deal and arranged a license with Naval to release Shuffle. And while I was studying abroad, I had actually sort of intentionally to challenge myself and see if I could actually sort of do this professionally, started working on a fan translation for Soul Link, which is another game. It's a sci-fi adventure game by Naval, the same people who made Shuffle. So I thought, well, if I'm working there, I can maybe ask them, if those rumors are true. Maybe I can try and at least sell this translation that I've already got like 65-70% done. Maybe make a little money, maybe go legit, maybe use that to get my foot in the door. And so I got there, and I worked the booth. The person there, he was very impressed with that I knew the games, that I could talk to the games, the passion that I had for visual novels. And I'll admit, my impression at the time was not the greatest, because he was kind of sitting in the back practicing his golf swings. While I was doing all the work talking to and working with customers, because it's he was a Japanese native who had moved to California a while back, so English was his second language. And eventually I did broach the topic with him about Soul Link at the convention, and I expected this would be the kind of thing where this representative would have to go back and talk to someone at MangaGamer and like get permission or arrange something. No, it turns out he was the majority shareholder on the board. And I was pretty much hired instantly on the spot. So once Otakon was over, that became basically my new focus, was talking with him, working with him, trying to get and arrange things, because obviously I was using like fan tools to shoehorn the translation in at the time. So trying to work out how to get what I had to work with what they could provide, and also actually finish the translation that I started, and touch it up now that I had learned Japanese after studying it even more. And I eventually got it to the point where it was ready for release, and submitted it, got paid, and after that was done, the guy basically asked me like, "Hey, we've got a couple others that are close to release. Do you want to look over them, tell us what you think about the translation?" And thus began the sort of nightmare that was the early dark days of MangaGamer. Oh my goodness. So obviously MangaGamer being a company that was founded by Japanese people, they didn't have any barometer for how to measure what a good translation is or isn't, because English is all Greek to them basically. And So I was looking through all these scripts for what was it, Da Capo 2, Koihime Muso, that were just very badly done, and that sort of quickly became my first all engrossing project where I was trying to correct the translations for those. Oh wait, no, sorry. I had actually done 808 8 in Fantasia. I did that before the Da Capo 2 Nightmare started. Yeah, they did have me at least do a couple projects
Okay.
for that nightmare. Yeah, it was like 808 8 in Fantasia, and I think Kouryuu Curtain Call. Yeah, I got those two out, and then they were like, "Okay, you've done a few projects for us. Here you go." And they were fucking like I said, they were fucking disasters. Um, and this led to basically a whole series of things. So while I had been working on 808 and Kouryuu Curtain Call, one of my friends from college who I knew him from my anime club at college. We both were part of it together. And after college, he had moved to the UK to try and do theater over there. But he was basically doing a lot of editing work for different companies in the industry and editing work in general for other companies. And just due to when I would be working on things and him being in the UK, we just kind of, my wake hours happened to be on the same time as him. So I very frequently message him when I had questions on a line, be like, "Hey, does this sound right? Is this okay?" Basically, kind of like bouncing my lines off of him and using him as an editor before the company had any editors at all. And so it got to the point between me and him where he basically told me like, "Okay, you are asking me too many questions. This is taking too much time. Either you need to stop or you need to pay me." And then we got the help for Da Capo 2 and Koihime Muso. So and I basically got permission from the company to be like, "Okay, I've looked through and it's like, of the 4 people you had work on this project, this person is salvageable with editing. Can I, assign it to my friend?" Basically what we did, and I worked on the parts that weren't salvageable to kind of retranslate them and try and get them up to at least passable. And that was a lot of work, and being a retranslation did not pay very well, but through that, I basically recruited MangaGamer's first editor. I basically did the hiring for the company through that, in a way. From that, and after that, they started giving him more of the like Nuki Gay projects, like Guilty the Sin, and a few of the other earlier ones that were at that same degree of like, okay, with some editing, with some liberal, this can be salvaged. And so he sent a lot of work his way while I was working on I started working on Deer Drops as a new release. And like basically like through that disaster of like Da Capo and Koihime, I basically ended up getting into a lot of different arguments with the MangaGamer management in Japanese emails, which was quite the quite the challenge. I never thought I would be doing. And basically through those arguments, got them to agree to make the decision to fire and let go of all those bad people that were producing bad work. So it's just a matter of clearing out the catalog of what they'd done before we fired them. And while we were doing that, I basically started going through and looking at, because with the visual novel forums, a lot of different fan translators were frequent people on that forum, and I had began. So as we were going through the whole process of kind of clearing out the catalog of bad translations, there were a couple of brief times where I didn't have a project to sort of actively work on, and at the time I had some family issues going on. I was basically taking care of my grandmother and grandfather, who were not in good shape, so I was basically their full-time caretaker while my mother worked, which was fortunately worked from home for MangaGamer, so I was able to do that. But between that and, like I said, the fact that every place I had applied before I worked for MangaGamer was always like, you need 2 years, 5-year experience before we'll even consider you. And like both me and sort of the heads of MangaGamer at the time were basically like, this company is dramatically in the red. We just need to keep it going. If we keep it going long enough, hopefully the numbers will turn around. And as far as me personally, as far as I was concerned, my main thing was like, all right, I need this company to stay alive long enough for me to get those 2 to 5 years experience on my resume, so that when and if it collapses, I at least have the experience and can hopefully get a job elsewhere. And because the prospects were so bleak, I used that sort of time when I wasn't working on a project to start doing all kinds of things that the company was not doing. I started a blog so I could talk about the games. I started up our Twitter account so that I could, post about the games on social media, post about working on the games on social media, interact with fans. I went on the forums that MangaGamer had at the time and would constantly respond to pretty much everyone I could. And it was basically, marketing. Turns out that was, marketing, did all that marketing without even having any kind of background or marketing degree. And the company at least kind of sort of recognized that, and between all that work that I was doing, that had kind of deepened my connections with the other fan translators in the visual novel scene at the time. And so I was actually able to do a lot of coordination working with the teams that had fan translations that were, say, not released yet, because once it was released, it's kind of non-viable, but close to release, and were at least interested in having their translations and their work go legitimate. And so I did a lot of back and forth between those groups and the Japanese only speakers at MangaGamer to coordinate and kind of bring those teams in. So as we got the fan, we would get the fan translator, we would get their game, we'd be able to license it, localize, finish it up, release it, oftentimes in better shape, because now we'd have access to things that you just don't as a fan translator. And we, since they had now done legitimate work for us, now we would give them more work. We assigned so many Nukige to so many fan translators that probably never wanted to work on Nukige at all. But they did, because it was work and it paid, and they got to work on visual novels. And at the time, that was kind of the thing. All right, you're going to do 2-3 Nukige for us, and then we'll give you 1 game you want. That was kind of how we sort of managed it in terms of like keeping people happy and keeping people satisfied. And yeah, that kind of kept going on, and the company got bigger, and eventually, we reached a point where it's like, oh, we're not dying. We're actually in the green, or in the black. We can actually keep going. I said from there it just kind of like expanded, like because I was so involved with that early beginning of the company, because I was already such a known person as far as like the CEO and the board members were concerned. It was very easy for them to kind of be like, all right, yep, we'll give you a salary, make your marketing duties official. And as we got bigger, as we got more releases, those the needs of our marketing team expanded. We took a couple of people from that were working with us as translators that were interested in doing marketing, brought them onto the marketing team, and just kind of the company just kind of grew from there. And as it grew, as it rose up, I basically did with it.
Awesome. Yeah. It could be that could be its own visual novel maybe one day. The journey, Kouryuu's journey to manga through MangaGamer, or it would be like we'd have like a whole opening and all of that stuff. We'd have like 6 sequels.
I was just say I already translated that one. It's called Arrowgate now.
Yeah, the thing, I mean,
the Arrowgate about making Arrowgate.
I'm kind of surprised that you started from something like vet tech or veterinary whatever to because most of the people I know who are seriously pursuing things like translation or anything in that kind of artistic creative sphere, they usually start out in the humanities. They don't usually go from STEM to that field. If anything, it's usually the other way around.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I have not encountered a lot of people that have made quite the career change I have. A lot of people that I've spoken to in more recent years that like come up and like want to work for MangaGamer, want to work for game companies, and kind of ask me how to get into it. It's like, yeah, they'll be like, I'm studying like programming and computer science, and I want to be able to like work with the engines, code the games, help make these localizations happen. Or it's like, I've been studying Japanese for so long, whether that's at college or self-study, more often than not self-study. And I'm like, yeah, like you said, it's very different. And that's just kind of the thing with like the industry, especially one as small as this, is it's luck is a large degree to it. And I'm honest with people when they ask me like how to get in the industry. 'Cause it's like you have to have the skills so that you can seize that chance when it comes, if it comes.
Okay, so basically, from what I'm aware of, this is how you get a job as a translator. You get you go for a STEM major. You study Japanese. You do translations, and then you go to conventions with companies that may or may not that companies that are in the red. Got it. Okay. That sounds legit. I think anyone could, easy guide to follow, right?
I mean, it's much easier to. It's actually much easier to get into it now, obviously, since because the visual novel market has grown so much since when I first started. I mean, you figure when I first joined MangaGamer, the only one releasing visual novels in English was Jazz. Hirameki was a company that did a few. They did a weird. They were trying to do a weird thing where they were releasing it on DVD so that you could play it from your DVD player on your TV at home, which just kind of confused everyone. And they lasted maybe 2-3 years and then went under. But it's like the only one that actually had any staying power was Jast, and that was primarily because of J-List. The whole merchandise, importing merchandise from Japan company that was J-List, that was such a, that's such a huge money generator that it was basically the backbone for Jast at the time. The only reason Jast was able to do anything, because visual novels didn't earn money at the time, was because of J-List. But it's like, between our efforts at MangaGamer, you figure we got visual novels on Steam. That was not a thing when I first joined the company. When our company first tried to publish one of our games on Steam, the representatives from Valve wrote us back and said, visual novels are not games. Sorry, goodbye. Basically. Not in those exact words. It was much, much, much more politer business speak, obviously. But that was basically the gist of it, was they're not games. Goodbye. The "they are not games" was actually in the email from Valve. And then, eventually, and so for the longest time, it just wasn't an option to publish on Steam. And, because I follow like gaming news and visual novel news and all that so closely, I caught it the day that Steam announced their Greenlight program, and we're like, all right, boom, put the games that we were going to release and try to release on Steam on Greenlight, and they made it through, much to Steam's surprise, and that really opened the floodgates, because now visual novels went from this like niche within a niche of like hentai and video games that you had to be a part of the dark corners of the internet to know about, to all of a sudden, here they are on the main PC gaming platform for everyone to see. And that has honestly just done a whole lot for the recognition of visual novels in the Western market. Like the entire reason that other Japanese companies like Shirafune, which is owned by DMM, are even considering and trying to a chunk out of the market share over here is because of the revenue that can be generated if the game is released on Steam.
Right.
And that wouldn't be a thing without us and without MangaGamer, but because the market is now so robust, it's a lot easier to apply with companies and get part of companies. Like I said, back when I started, the company published a game. They still actually tried to do one game a month. That was always kind of the goal. But it was more of a struggle back then. And now we're generally much better about releasing one game a month. I know I say that with the fact that we currently have a couple of months gap this year, just because we have several very long projects that are in the works and getting close to finishing.
God bless Ransex's soul.
Oh my God, Rance 10. That is lengthy.
That is.
I can imagine that board meeting. It's like, okay, 3 times the length of Lord of the Rings trilogy. We only need one, right?
Yeah, it sounds good. Weren't there like 3 there were like 3 translators on that originally, if I'm not mistaken, right? Or
Rance 10, there was we've only had 2 officially assigned to it. There was the first translator assigned to it that left the company not on great terms, and then we assigned someone else to it.
Right, and so now Steiner's working on it.
Yeah.
Poor Steiner. That is like, from what I've read, that is like the world's longest video game script. Like, period. It's insane. But yeah, like, yeah.
And that's even
But
including other visual novels, which
Mhm.
notoriously
like-
have long scripts.
And from what I've read, it's like what I've calculated, it's like 4.5 times the length of the Bible. So just for context for everybody, for just how monstrous of a project that is. But yeah, like, you know, now we're getting games, you know, before visual novels weren't approved on Steam, but now we're getting games like Sex with Hitler, Sex with Hitler 2, Sex with Hitler 2069,
Yeah,
Sex with
talk
Hitler
about
3D,
going from
Sex with
nothing
Hitler World
to
War II.
flooded with crap.
Honestly, dealing with Steam seems like it's kind of a nightmare because I can never really tell what their standards are for what is and isn't allowed. And it seems to change.
Congratulations, that's exactly how it is for every developer publishing adult games on Steam.
Well, yeah, because I remember
they do not have standards, basically.
Yeah,
it is a guessing game. It is a gamble. Like there's a few things that we can kind of assume at this point. Like, okay, seems like the general consensus is if there's school uniforms, it's automatically no go. But anything else is roll the dice, because they don't have standards. They don't have a way to appeal decisions. They don't tell you why it was banned. They don't tell you, like, this content is an issue. Would you like to change it? No. They just say Kain was banned, basically. So there's no information, there's no appeals process. And like you said, when pretty much like when the life or death of projects can ride on that, it's a really bad place to be in. And that's kind of where it is for all the visual novel devs right now.
Yeah, and you know, I'm kind of like thinking that there might need to be a need for like some kind of like universal, like a Steam like equivalent maybe to visual novels, where there's more of a appeal to that market, where it's like, you know, you have an appeals process like that. Would you like to change your content for things like that, for for stuff like that, and that could be interesting to see.
Well, I know there are platforms like
me and Bamboo. Me and Bamboo, the CEO that started MangaGamer, he's not as involved now as he used to be, but yeah, me and him, like, that was our vision for MangaGamer kind of around the middle of its development. Unfortunately, issues with the website and getting Japanese companies to develop a working, functional website has put quite a few roadblocks in the way of that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the website's like the first step, and then like an app though, like Steam, you know, would be like probably like having like a VN launcher and all of that would be like.
I've talked about this in some of our internal meetings.
Yeah, hey, you know, we're talking about it on the podcast. Do it, MangaGamer, pointing to the camera.
Yeah.
Well, also given that a lot of visual novels typically don't have DRM attached to them, I imagine on a technical level that wouldn't be very hard to do.
I know, like in theory, like in theory, like in terms of the whole like delivery and installation, I hesitate to say because I know basically nothing about programming. So if I say anything, it's like I could be completely wrong. But like I agree with you. I feel like making the delivery app system shouldn't be too difficult. I mean, I know there's other aspects of it that start to complicate things, like when it comes to, you know, being able to like automate, like deal with the finances and financial reporting of sales, managing accounts. Oh my God. So, you know, I've gone most of my life assuming that it's absolutely easy and not a problem for companies to send out mass marketing emails because everyone always gets them and they show up in your spam inbox like 30 a day. But it is actually quite a fucking nightmare. I am not the one personally working on this project. One of our other management is, but just trying to get our, like I said, our marketing mail magazine, our mail subscription up and running again has been way more of a challenge than I ever thought it would. Largely because we're an adult company, so that immediately means that like 90% of the companies normal companies would use don't want to work with us.
Yeah.
And then like also trying to find one that's like cost affordable for us within that limited, selection. I mean, some of our fans may remember a while back when we actually had issues with our like credit card payment processor. Like this is something like most people as consumers never even think about. You go to a website, you give them your credit card information, the game's bought, you never see any of the inner workings, right? But the little credit card payment processor, the company that actually like checks your credit card information against the bank, is a key step in that process that you cannot live without if you want to be able to do digital banking. And if you're an adult company, you're fucked. Because it's like so many processors just outright refuse to do business with anyone doing or dealing in adult content. They're like, nope, you're adult, not doing it. The ones that do, they're like, you are a high risk product. We will charge you the same rate as gambling. So they want to take a 20% cut of every transaction when most credit card processors, like what Walmart uses, probably uses less than 3% charge. So you can't, or you have to, or companies will advise you to like, okay, if you want to run this and do this, like what you need to do is set up a bank account in this tiny island off the coast of Greece that's an independent nation that is a tax haven and sounds suspicious as all fucking hell. Like we actually got that advice from a company. I forget the name of the island.
Wow.
It's like sea something or whatever. But it's this little tiny rock in the middle of the Adriatic that is just an independent tax haven. And like you just need to like incorporate a shell account there and run things through that. And it's like, no, can we not do that? We did eventually find a Japanese payment processor that would work with us. So we were able to get our site back up and running, but it's like, these are the kind of things with like an adult industry that's like, yes, you think it would be simple to set up a site that can do these things, when in actuality it's like, no, everyone hates you because you're an adult company.
Yeah, and I actually do know a bit about the programming side of things, and as you're talking, it's making me thinking, oh yeah, if you can't use any of the major providers, like some ridiculous number of websites that offer payment services, they use Stripe. Yep. And Stripe is extremely easy to use, like, and it's really well documented. Once you move away from Stripe, it stops being easy to use and it stops being well documented. So just even if you get one that works for you, just getting it up and running is going to be a challenge as well.
And like Stripe will allow us to use Stripe. We can use Stripe for hard copy sales at conventions. That is what Stripe will allow us, because it's not a digital product and it's not being used on our website. So the fact that we have like opening videos and sample CGs to promote the games, a lot of these companies they consider that free porn. That you are providing free porn to anyone that visits your website. So we will not let you use our processor on your site because of that. So like that's one of the reasons why we can't use Stripe. PayPal is another one where it's like, in theory, we could use like US American PayPal as a payment processor, but because our company is incorporated in Japan, PayPal will not let us use the US PayPal. We have to use the Japanese PayPal, and Japanese PayPal will not let us use it because our porn is uncensored, and you can't sell uncensored porn in Japan.
Evil Japanese companies. No.
I blame the US for that because we are the ones that wrote that goddamn clause in their constitution that forces them to censor their porn.
Wait, really? Oh my.
It was the occupational forces when Japan was drafting the constitution during the occupation immediately following World War II. Yeah, there were several US government officials sitting in that room looking over the document they were drawing and being like, yeah, no, we don't like that. No, you're gonna have to change that one. Yeah, this is gonna write out. And they basically went through and redlined the Constitution with the things that the US didn't want. And one of the things they added in was this whole clause about, so the goal that the US had was to prevent Japan from slipping back to the imperial standards where they were, using propaganda and teaching kids in school that the, Empire of Japan is great and you should serve the empire. So the whole clause, it was a clause about like wholesome, healthy education or something like that. I don't have it in front of me to read the exact terms, but like I said, we implemented that clause to prevent Japan from sort of slipping back into that imperial mindset, and Japanese courts and judges basically interpreted that clause to be like, no, you can't have uncensored porn.
Unbased and cringe. I think that's the best term to describe that as.
Yeah, it's like when the post-nut clarity hits so hard that you're just like, for the emperor.
So true. That's that's a lot. Wow. Yeah, that's like, oh my god, translation goes deep. Holy crap. That's a lot. Yeah. Wow. Whew. Me and Andrew were kind of like wondering. Well, we were thinking. I was yeah, like a question that we have sometimes is when navigating challenges like cultural references, idioms, and whatnot that that don't have direct translations, and like there's some things like sometimes with like sentence structure and whatnot, like like if you, for example, like I speak Russian, if you translate things to Russian, it's like I want to know, like they the subject, the whatever, the verb, they're all like mixed up and all that. So when you directly translate it, it just sounds really weird, right? Then you gotta interpret it into like the English structure. So when it comes to Japanese like visual novels or like media in general, like how is there like a way, this is a pretty complicated question. It's like but like how do you go about like bringing about like kind of the way that the closest intent for the from the script writer to English, if that question makes sense?
It does. So before I get into that question, I just kind of want to share a funny anecdote. So when I was in college, I did minor in English. So I was taking, one of the classes I took was on the works of Milton, the author of Paradise Lost. And if you've ever read that book, ever read the like Paradise Lost and Paradise, the whatever the second one was called, it's it's a poetic, it's structured very weird as far as normal English is concerned, or at least most modern readers would consider it. And like everyone in that class with me struggled to understand the Milton's writing at like the basic level of like, this clause is modifying this noun, which is in this sentence modifying this noun. Like everyone in my class was struggling to understand that, but because I had taken Japanese, where that's just what Japanese does, it made absolute perfect sense to me. And so I actually didn't have any trouble with that, because a lot of the sentence structures and the way that Japanese works has a decent amount of similarities with Latin, which is of course where Milton drew a lot of his inspiration, because writers at the time all were required to know Latin. So it's the idea of like, if this particle is here, then that means this clause is this part of the sentence. Or if you add this to the verb, then that means it is this. Like that, a lot of that actually has similarities to the original Latin, which is not something you'd normally think about for two languages that couldn't have developed any further apart.
Okay.
So that's just kind of like an interesting thing to kind of sort of think about. And it's like, so when trying to do, references and like the culture, idioms and things like that, it's so like there are times where sometimes I will fall back on that a bit, where it's like, okay, like, yes, this might not necessarily be all that common in modern reading, but it's not grammatically incorrect. Like, if you phrase it and put the sentence structure this way, it is still actually grammatically correct English, because it's just most people don't use those grammar structures anymore. So sometimes I can play with that to get some of them. And other times it's about finding like the closest match. Specific ones not coming to mind at the moment, but it's like there's usually like a lot of Japanese idioms will have English equivalents. It's not the exact same words, so if the like sentence or scene that you're working on happens to use a word in that idiom as a pun for something else in the scene, you might be completely screwed. And in which case you basically have to like, okay, the English equivalent is this. Which is the more important part of this to keep? Do I keep the thing that they're punning on that's, correct to the Japanese idiom, or is this something that I can safely alter the English to something else, then sort of keep the English equivalent idiom and just, make the pun something else and not lose the comedy from that? Like, what was it? A good example is, so very recently in the project that I'm currently working on, Welcome to Sex Open World, there was a couple lines in one of the opening scenes where it was talking, they brought up the term Kuribo, which is short for Christmas bochi, which basically means spending Christmas alone. And Kuripo is also the Japanese for Goombas in Mario. And so the pun expanded from like him being like sad and alone in his room to talking about like Goombas kidnapping Peach and I was like, that's yeah, what? that like, there's like, how do you pun off Goomba in English? I was like, I just like, I basically gave up. I like threw a bullshit word into the text to try and keep it, and just like left copious notes in the comments section to be like, editor, this is what's going on. If you can figure this out, please help. And I think it was like gooning or gooming, I think is the actual like slang Urban Dictionary term that we ended up using to try and capture that pun at all. So, and that's basically kind of like, it's that kind of thing where it's like, so much of like trying to capture puns and idioms is such a case by case basis, because it's like, step one is you have to identify what is the most important aspect here. Like, does it matter that he's using an idiom? Does it matter that or is it just, or like, is it fine if you just convey the idea of what he's trying to say? Does the pun, like, is there a pun, and does that pun matter more? Is that pun like used for comedy or deeper meaning or foreshadowing or something else? And so it's like, you kind of go through that sort of checklist until you figure out like, okay, this is the important part of the sentence that we have to keep. This is the part that like matters to the project and the story.
Hey, editing ads here. At this point we had some technical issues that both interrupted us and caused a bit of lost footage, so I'm going to skip ahead here, but you're not missing anything. Enjoy the rest of the interview.
As I was saying, basically, yeah, like, I'm thinking that AI tools could begin to actually be like a great help, because I know AI, I'm not sure, I don't think AI is close, I don't think AI is anywhere close to, like, well, actually, I don't know if AI is close to translating, like, to helping, to replacing translators, but you have so many, like, urban, like, like, kind of like, I don't know, so many, like, niche things. How do we say it? Like complexities,
like slang and jargon, and
yeah, like complexities, slang, jargon, all of that stuff within within the language. Then yeah, like that, it's not really too effective. But yeah, like, what do you think of like AI, like, as possibly, helping with the translation projects? Maybe like it could you know like find things for people, or yeah, just implementation of AI into translation as a tool.
yeah. So I'm also actually personally excited about like what AI can do to help translation and facilitate translation. So I've actually kind of been following its developments fairly closely. I listen to a couple of podcasts that very frequently cover it. The New York Times Hard Fork was one of my primary sources, and I think there's like the sheer level of creative decision making that's required to like effectively handle these puns and idioms. I think that is a question for AI 20 years from now. I don't think the AI we have is quite at that level, so I'm not worried about like losing my job in my lifetime. But I mean, it actually is decently capable of like translating content. Like, there are people that will like use it to translate lectures, or translate test material. So like, there's a lot of ESL people that they've interviewed and talked to on the podcast I listened to, where it's like, that's what they do. Sort of on a more relevant note, we actually at MangaGamer right now, we actually have one translator who is he is someone who I am the project manager for, and he is actually like he's come to me and he's talked about it and he's admitted that's like he has a version of a large language model that he is running and is using to assist his translation. And I've reviewed his work. It's still up to our standards, so that's fine. And I think where the large language models, like ChatGPT AI is right now, I think that is where they are best used, is that idea of a advanced, much more user-friendly version of machine-assisted translation. So it can do a lot of, like, it's very good with common phrases, common words, like all the kind of lines that, like, I translated so many scenes into Capo 3 where all they talked about was eating fucking food. Like, I'm sure ChatGPT can do that just fine. But it's still, obviously, it's not perfect. It still has issues. You still need an actual person to go over, review, adjust the text. Like I said, our translator that's using ChatGPT to assist and speed up his work. That's basically how he uses it. He runs it, goes over it, checks it, fixes it, and it lets him effectively translate a little faster than he was previously, while without a significant loss in quality. So I think that is where the large language models are going to be most useful in the field of translation, especially within the next 5-10 years. I mean, like I said, I'm excited. I am, like, the day that Google actually gets Bard capable of taking the command of read column B, put the English in column C for me, my work will start going like 400 times faster.
Yeah, and then we can go like once a week. No, I'm just joking. No. But
don't tempt some companies. No.
No. Yeah. Yeah, but I wanted to get to what's it called? I actually wanted to get to Maggot Baits. That one, that translation. See, getting like, how do we, like, so many questions. Like, how do we get that in the like, how do we get that, like, how does a company be like, yeah, we can sell this to like a Western audience. This is okay. Like, how does, I don't know, like, I don't really know like the semantics of like getting that onto the Western market and just the process of translating that. Could you tell us a bit about that?
Sure. So it actually started with Euphoria. Clock Up was they originally made Euphoria. They originally released it in Japan. They originally they approached us. We were in talks with them about potentially like licensing, localizing, releasing Euphoria in here. Clock Up, of course, they were legitimately concerned about the content in Euphoria, and part of the discussion we had with them was, is this too extreme to release in America? And so, our general manager came to me, gave me a copy of the game, and I played through it, and I went through pretty much all the scenes, and as I'm going through it, sort of the thing in the back of my mind is like, okay, have we seen this elsewhere? Like, someone pissing themselves. Yep, that's been in porn. Have we seen like shit going from one person's mouth into another? Well, Human Centipede was released, okay. And it's just kind of like, that was basically the thing, like going through the scene. Like I would go through the scenes and I'd be like, can I think of some movie or porn or like any other kind of media that where this content has been released in the US already? And also the key big one is, does this story overall arguably have artistic merit? And Euphoria actually does a really good job with the sort of psychoanalysis and going into like the motivations of the main character, what drives him, what drives the characters. It just like Saw, there is legitimate like reasons behind it. There's a genuinely good story. It's genuinely brought together. So there is a large argument there that it has artistic merit. Do I want to have to make that argument in court? No. Do I believe we could? Yes. So that was part of why I said, like, okay, yes, I think this game will be fine. We released it, waited. It was fine. All right. Let's take a look at this other game that they've done that where they went a bit more extreme because they wanted to, there's a bunch of scenes that they wanted to do that they couldn't with the content board that they used for approvals for Euphoria. So, we get Maggot Baits. I look through it, run through it. Some of the scenes nearly make me vomit, but ultimately I'm like, again, does the story have artistic merit? Yes, it does. Are the scenes anything that's been released in America before? Maybe? Like, it's a bit of more of a stretch, but I think it's close enough. America doesn't care about violence half as much as they care about sex. So, so we released it, waited, everything's fine, knock on wood. So yeah, that's how it exists.
Yeah.
I'm curious about almost the marketing element of it, because for me, I read Euphoria long time ago, and it was basically by complete accident. I saw it and I'm like, this looks really dumb. I'm going to check it out. And it was morbid curiosity, basically. It was before I really knew any of the developer names in the visual novel space. And then I read it, I'm like, holy shit, this is actually really good. I almost wonder how often do people get bait and switched by something by ClockUp, or like how can you really sell it as like the genuine artistic work that it is?
So, like with Euphoria, we were able to pitch it sort of a lot more on the artistic merit. Everyone's kind of familiar with Saw. That's an angle that's very easy to take with people, and when you pitch it to people that way, they go in knowing what to expect. There's not really a bait and switch in that sense. And so, like, because we knew that Maggot Baits is so extreme, like that was an active decision that I made, like, from day one before we even began marketing Maggot Baits, is to take that approach of, this game is extreme, this game is hardcore, like, do you have the stomach for it? So, because that was basically kind of the point at that, like, it was, like, we knew we could kind of rely on the popularity of ClockUp between Euphoria and Arage to at least get some curiosity, and a lot of people respond well when you poke that morbid curiosity and kind of challenge them to, like, can you handle it? Can you take it? But at the same time, like, that challenge also makes sure that anyone who doesn't want it doesn't get near it. So that's part of, like, that was kind of part of our marketing strategy with that was, we were very upfront about the fact that Maggot Baits is extreme. It is hardcore. We have CG on the product page that shows some of the, like, horrible maiming. We did not hide the fact that it has extreme content, and that ensures that the right people buy it, basically.
Right.
It ensures that, like, the people who are going to cause problems over it don't touch it. And
yeah.
Well, there's also the case of I can imagine a lot of Clock-Up's stuff appealing to almost the fetishists, even though that's really not the demographic they're going for. Because
it depends on which. Like, if you're talking about like Arrow Gay Arrow Voice, it's absolutely for like the normal fetishists.
Yeah.
But I sorry, I interrupted. I understand you're talking about their more darker stuff like Euphoria, Maggot Baits, Dead Days, which we'll be releasing eventually.
Yeah, because I mean, with Euphoria, I'm not into any of the stuff that was shown in there. In fact, a lot of it kind of repulsed me. But
I also nearly vomited when I first played through Maggot Baits.
Yeah, but the thing is, the story they were going for couldn't have really been told if they didn't go to those extremes, and it creates a very unique experience that, and it for me, it's very hard to convince people to try it out. But I mean, I always tell them, like, if you can handle it, this is like the type of storytelling they do. You're not gonna really find it anywhere else.
Yeah, and it's like when I have the time to make kind of a better pitch, like if you guys have probably heard me give it at conventions. Like when I'm pitching Maggot Baits, like my like quick run-on sentence spiel like talks about how it's about an ex-cop that wants vengeance and the fact that like the women were like gang raped in a Black Sabbath ritual and brought these like super powered witches in to the world. So it's like I make sure to cover a lot of those points that will at least intrigue someone that's not immediately turned off by the fact that it's violent and brutal. And like I said, while we're equally upfront about the fact that it is extreme, like the sort of video blogs that I posted for Maggot Baits, like I went in and I talked about how the game absolutely covers themes of Eros versus Agape and like which type of love is best in the world, which is more ideal, or the it's been so many years since I actually did those that I don't remember the actual themes I covered. But that's like I said, in the video blogs I covered a lot of those sort of themes and story points that you could expect, while we were also talking about how violent it was.
I see. Yeah. Well, unfortunately, Andrew hasn't been to one of the conventions where you guys were at yet. Pathetic. Wow. I only go to the convention that you guys are at that I go to is AX, and that's how I met you. And I may have met you in like last year, maybe potentially, but I probably wouldn't know because I think you worked at the booth, right? If I'm not mistaken, like both those years.
I've been working at the MangaGamer booth since 2010 when it comes to Anime Expo.
Yeah, so I probably saw you. Like I remember seeing you in 2022 and then in 2023 I had in 2022, I don't know if you remember me, I had a black eye. I was very memorable. I fell over. I fell like down from a scooter, so I kind of looked like I felt like everyone there was scared. They were just
feel like I maybe remember that, but I barely remember anyone from. My memory's not the best at times, especially with like I need to see a person like 3 or 4 times before I really remember them usually.
Yeah, but... that's like the same with me, definitely. But yeah, like I think at that panel, like people were too scared because they probably thought that I got into like some fist fight or something. When in fact I fell over. So I felt like they were just talking to me like out of like out of like, okay, I don't want to get hurt by this guy.
Oh
I'll
my
just
goodness.
listen to what he has to say. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um
I've been running the panels for our company at Anime Expo for way too long. I actually didn't want to start doing the panels at first. It was what was it? It was AX. I think it was either 2010 or 2011, where it's like our Japanese guests basically like shoved a piece of paper in my hands and said, "You're doing it," and put me in front of the mic, and it was like, "All right, you're the one that's gonna be like the host, introducing everyone." And I was like, I guess this is happening now." And I've basically been doing our panels ever since.
yeah, I mean the panels are really fun. I think over the year, I think they've gotten like the panel the this year and last year were like really fun. It was just like kind of wholesome. I guess in the whole like, atmosphere, you know, you have like
Yeah.
it's small enough it kind of feels like its own family, you know. Um
Mm.
a little bit even. But yeah. So you guys go to like I think like Otakon, Anime NYC if I'm not mistaken, AX.
Yeah.
Are those like the main three, or do you guys have some more that you go to?
Those are the main three we do right now. We used to do Anime Boston, but the staff members that we actually had in Boston have moved down to Texas, so we don't have anyone available to do that convention anymore. We also used to do SakuraCon until COVID basically stopped that because the two staff members that we had do SakuraCon, one would fly in from Japan, one would fly in from Canada, and obviously COVID didn't let anyone fly in or back, especially not back to Japan. So we might, I imagine, I would hope that we'd eventually go back to SoccerCon, but it kind of depends on like costs and availability and other things like that. So
Yeah.
for now it's AX, Otakon, and Anime New York, but
Yeah, and again, panels. If anyone who's watching, anyone you're in the U.S., and you're close to any of these, go. They're very very fun. Go to conventions. I hear a lot of like people be like, I've never been to an anime convention. I like this media, that media. Like I like visual novels. Okay, you can meet the people. You know, it's like
yeah.
I can meet the people. What? Like I'm like yeah, you can do that. It's like to go to these expos. I mean, there's a lot of people there, but I understand for like some socially awkward people, it could, I understand,
Socially awkward people, you mean like 70% of our staff?
yeah. I mean, like literally the average weeb, literally, like I think everyone there is like socially awkward, and then everyone says like, oh, I can't be socially awkward. Meanwhile, like AX has like 100,000 plus attendees that are
Like
all
it's not it's not a disparaging remark. It's like, yes, everyone, like almost everyone in this industry and fandom, has at least a little bit of weirdness to them. And weird is good, weird is fun, weird is interesting. Normal's boring.
Yeah, I do find myself like going out to just intentionally like do experiences, like have experiences which are just very weird, that could potentially be dangerous sometimes, but like don't do what I do.
Yeah, I don't do the dangerous ones. That's no, none of that for me.
like traveling by myself in like the middle of the night in like downtown LA. I'm gonna go here. This is interesting. And I'm in like near like Skid Row or something.
I would say you're a guy. That's not that dangerous.
I'll say if anything, he's downplaying the dumb shit he gets up to occasionally. Like there are questions like, how are you alive and with all your organs?
Yeah, I mean, hey, that's just the Dvovsky experience, I guess.
If you ever want a glimpse, like just the briefest glimpse at some of the dumb shit our staff has done, like while at conventions, just search Twitter for the hashtag MG After Hours.
Oh my god.
Oh.
Okay, I'm actually gonna write that down in the notes.
Yeah, that's immediately getting on
Okay.
my to-do list.
Yeah.
Assuming some of those are still up there.
Like I can imagine the marketing, like, well, whoever the other, there were like three people on the panel, I remember, in AX, and one of them was like like, I can imagine just like all you guys getting like blackout drunk or something in the middle of the night. I don't know. I'm just making stuff up, but like I can just imagine, yeah, crazy staff is cool. But yeah, like AX has some of the craziest like parties. Like, I don't know if you guys like have been to some of like there are like some infamous parties. I have had a
I
guy.
have heard of a couple of them in recent years. 'Cause I don't usually go to those parties myself, but yeah, I've started to hear about some of them.
Yeah, yeah. After in this year, some guy told me. So I had a roommate, right? Like, I just met this guy off of Discord. I'm like, "Yo, you want to be my roommate for AX?" He's like, "Sure." You know, we went because we went to we wanted to stay at the Marriott, so we booked a room, and then we split it between. It was gonna be 4 people, and then it went down to 2, and then we got 2 people like later. Anyways, so this guy goes up to me, and like, we're talking about parties. He's like, "Oh yeah, there's like this AX orgy that I went to once," and I was like, "What the fuck?"
Where? When?
Yeah, like, and I'm like, and I'm just thinking, like, I need to keep this in mind, because I need to, like, I'm not even joking. I want to get a notepad, like, with a pen.
Yeah.
I'm dead serious. Just attend. Like, I'm not gonna be doing anything, and I'm gonna like I'm gonna write down the behaviors of like all of the people at the AX orgy. and just like write down, this is quite peculiar. These people.
So you're gonna be the guy sitting in the chair in the corner.
The voyeur. Indulging that voyeur kink.
But it's not even like that. Like I know, yeah, it's like, oh, this
that
guy's
is how
coping.
everyone at the orgy will see it.
Yeah, everyone at the orgy will see it like that. But I'll have like fake glasses on or something. I'll look as professional as I can be. I swear. Maybe, I don't know.
When you
Showing
said
up to
fake
the orgy
glasses,
in a
I thought
suit.
like the super ones that have the like fake swirls in the center of them that are obviously props.
Yeah, I gotta, or I can put my Rance cosplay on, and then I can sit in the corner and just like, not like, ironically, just Rance is doing like nothing. Yeah. Oh my god. But yeah, like, conventions are awesome. They are experiences. But yeah. Yeah, I'm wondering though, like, what is the most like challenging thing you've ever like translated? Whether that be like an anime or a visual novel or an arrow, or maybe possibly like an arrow game and whatnot.
So, I'd say there's 2 that I would list, and it's for very different reasons. The first I'll go with is kind of the easy one. Maggot Baits, both obviously because of the content, but it's also just like the writing in that is extremely detailed and very extremely vivid. So like they get into all the different like smells and sounds, and so like on the one hand, like it's excellent. It does a great job of depicting the scenes, but like as the translator, it's like I can't skip through any of those lines, no matter how much they've been talking about a pig's corkscrew penis piercing an amniotic sac. And also just like from the technical perspective, like the actual author, Kouryuu, I think it is, like the way he writes and the language that he writes is a more complicated. It is a more complex style of writing, and uses more sort of like complex terminology and language structure. So it was also a bit of a linguistic challenge to work on, and it was fun in that sense.
Mhm. Okay.
So that was one I would say probably the most like actively challenging, and it was in a sort of that sort of very engaging, very fun way.
I
The
see.
second the second one that I would list as my most challenging is actually Takapo 3. And it's for the complete opposite reason. It is the language in that was not a challenge at all. It's fairly basic, fairly simple. There was no there's like no linguistic challenge to it. The kind of like I mentioned earlier, there were several scenes where it just spent the entire scene talking about them eating food, which like it's a cute slice of life romance. I understand plenty of people like this, especially like if it's your first visual novel or one of your first five, like you're still in college, like that's the perfect game for you, very enjoyable. I've been doing this for so many years. So for me, such a it was such a struggle for me because like for me and with my experience and having worked on, things with such a much broader variety of content between, Koihime Muso and its countless different sex scenes, or several of like you said, Bukake Ranch, Eroge, like all these other titles that have had such a wide variety. It was just such a drag because it was also long. Like Takapo 3 was basically the same length of Koihime Muso, which is longer than the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Oh my god.
Once you got through every single route, every single bonus like route. And so, like you said, imagine like maybe not necessarily the length of Rance 10, maybe something more like the length of Rance 9. That's just slice of life. And
Yeah.
I was working on this at the exact same time that I was starting to. Our company was flourishing. We were doing releases every month, and it was getting to the point where trying to keep up, trying to produce the same amount of content and marketing for each game that I had been doing previously when I had free time between projects to do that work.
Mhm.
It left me so pressed for time, and just between like the crunch and the pressure of trying to do all of that myself while also trying to force myself to make progress on this, what was for me an unengaging title. It drove me to burnout.
I see. Yeah.
And we eventually made changes. We brought on more people into marketing to lighten my load there so that I could have the time to help finish it up. And I also just had to do soul searching and kind of convince myself like there is a reason why I do this. I do like doing this, and push myself to finish it. And I did eventually get through it. I did eventually finish it on my own, and which is still a mark of pride for me because it is a very long game. Probably one of the longest that I have actually translated. And I will never touch the Kappa 4.
Yeah. So, you know what? Fair enough. Fair enough.
Someone else can do the Kappa 4 because I'm sure plenty of people will enjoy it. But that will not be me.
Yeah. Well, So the Kappa 4 is never coming out. I'm just joking though. But yeah.
Never say never.
No, of course. I think now we're reaching a point where the VN space, the whole market for that is so large. Like a lot of things are, basically, unless they're in like licensing hell, where like maybe the original company is like not non-existent or anything anymore, for whatever, like Arrowgate or
Yeah.
or where it's where it may happen. Something I really want to see is I think if I recall correctly, the sequel to Fate Stay Night isn't translated. If I recall.
Holodoroxia,
Yeah.
the Fantasy.
Yeah. So that's something that someone needs to like take on. And I think people want that. But yeah,
until
didn't
recently
start doing Fates? Didn't Aniplex start doing Type Moon's visual novels? I think they did. So
they seem weirdly resistant to translations a lot of the time. Like I think what was Tsukihime Remake was was like the first thing I ever heard of Type Moon getting like actually translated.
Yeah. So I feel like that, like
the Holy Night before that, I thought.
Maybe I'm not an expert on these things.
You have companies that that have like a stranglehold on like this IP, right? So like everyone else is like, I can't touch this IP, and then it like they never do anything with it, and then like people are infuriated, like, why? This is so good. No. But yeah, that's all. Like, what are you? Can you guys take on Mother 3? It's like
I mean, sometimes there's also just like surprising background issues that that fans wouldn't like know or expect. Like maybe there's maybe the voice license fees are astronomical, and that prevents a license. I can think of a few titles that I will not name where that is absolutely the case.
I
that
see.
the voice license fees are just much higher than the return you could ever expect.
Okay.
Even given the current health of the current market.
Yeah, I bet there's also technical stuff too. Like I know in games sometimes companies just lose the source code, which is why certain games never get ported or re-released.
Or they lose the original CGs.
Yeah.
Yes. There's several, especially when you're dealing with older games. That is also a common problem where it's like, the company just deleted it from the hard drive and they don't have it anymore, and it's like, oh good god. So that sometimes that's an issue. Other times it's also just like you said, it can be entanglements from other companies. Like if anything that's had a console port, whoever did that console port has probably 7 out of 10 chance that they have some kind of clause that basically says the original company can't do anything without at least consulting that company that did the console port. And so now instead of trying to negotiate and convince one company, you got to do it with 2. And those 2 might not agree.
Yeah. That's that sounds like a lot, to deal with. And then that's wow, that's a lot. Like again, like people don't know, like the average consumer doesn't like realize that this is
things that we don't like as a fan, as a gamer, like as a player, it's like it's so far removed from your experience interaction with the games. It's like, why would you know? Why would it come up?
Yeah, and this and this conversation has been like extremely enlightening, into the inner workings of all of that. So I really appreciate it. Thank you for thank you so much. But another, like, let's see, what is your the favorite thing you've translated, like, ever? Or I don't know if that's a good
Oof. So it's hard to list one. I have several that I would I have a few different ones that I would list there. On the VN side, I would absolutely list Deerdrops. I had so much fun working on that. It was such an entertaining game to work on. It's like I drew a lot of, like, even while playing it and while working on it, I drew a lot of inspiration and a lot of um I like it was just one of those games that sort of really connected with me and really impacted me, like, at the core. And so whenever I have a chance, I do always recommend that to people. Um Another one that I would say is uh like we talked about Fate earlier. I absolutely take pride in the fact that I was able to do the translation for the Prisma Ilia anime. You know, I've always been a fan of Type Moon, and it's like, all right, I've at least got my name on one title, like on one title in this Type Moon franchise has my name on it. So it's like, because everyone's in this industry is constantly like jumping at the gun to try and be the one to work on Type Moon stuff.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And
So yeah.
another one is actually, so the anime Oreimo is actually the very first anime that I translated officially, professionally.
Oh, I didn't know you did that one. Okay,
Yeah, I did. Anime News Network is actually the one that hired me for that.
Oh, interesting. Oh, so they actually handle like hiring for Crunchyroll and whatnot, or
Well, no. So back at the time, Anime News Network was trying to get into anime streaming themselves. In addition, and sort of they wanted to compete with Crunchyroll on that front, and so they had licensed a few shows to do themselves exclusively. Oreimo was one of them. Then they had some issues with security in their servers, and that basically died after that season.
Mm.
But that was the first anime that I ever officially localized, and between working on that and between working on Da Capo 3, that is what let me get my foot in the door at Crunchyroll. Because when Crunchyroll licensed Da Capo 3, they had came to me to be like, hey, can you give us like any materials or anything to help make sure that our translation is consistent with the anime? And I was like, I did the game. I could do the show for you.
Yeah.
And that's how I got into Crunchyroll, basically.
Through Da Capo 3, The Nightmare, or what? No,
Yeah.
was that yeah? But yeah, yeah. And, a question I have is like, often like, I wonder how involved like the original staff is in the English like translation, or is that kind of like all on you? Like, do you get some like, do you like what's it called, talk with like the Japanese staff, for example, who watch the anime and whatnot, like before, what's it called, before when you're translating?
So it varies a lot. So like when I first started at MangaGamer, Overdrive would actually like give us an Excel sheet to be like, here are some references and some puns that are not common that you might not know. So, and here's what they are. So I didn't have to like look them up or research them or anything, and that was kind of amazing. I've never had that from anyone ever, other than them, and other times, generally speaking, with a lot of the games that we do now, it's usually comes down to like, if our teams have a question, we can basically forward that to the general manager, who speaks to the company, gets sort of the word up from a pie back from them, brings it back to us. There's also some back and forth there too. For for example, like Waffle, the developers of the Fun Pack Fantasy series, they always insist on going over all the names and all the romanizations and approving the spellings for every name in every game. That's just the thing they do. When we first did the Fun Pack Fantasy series, they were also very insistent that we get the cup sizes right. So they were very involved in making sure that we accurately localized the breast sizes for every heroine in all the Fun Pack Fantasy series. But plot wise, that not as much.
Makes sense. That's what we need. That's what the fans want. Obviously, it's
so
like
an actual titty committee.
Yeah, basically.
Makes sense. Yeah.
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 And I guess and on the anime front, it varies. Again, it varies too. Like most of the time, I don't get anything. At least when I first start. Sometimes, if there's if the light novel or the manga has already been translated, they might be able to get the terms sheet from the company that localized that original work, and we can use that as sort of a base for when we're localizing the anime. But that does not always happen. That is sometimes happen. Also, sometimes very frequently they're generally offhand, but sometimes the production committee will be much more involved. We've had several arguments with the production committee on Jujutsu Kaisen, but and that a lot of that has to do with what I think should be the term and what Viz decided was the term however long ago.
I see. Yeah, I mean that's a more heavy project, right? Like Jujutsu Kaisen.
Yeah.
Like those are big names at that point, and yeah, it's like people don't realize. Yeah, just like so. Okay, this is a bit of a silly question. Would you do like all of the captions for all of the episodes?
What do you mean by all the captions?
So like for the English, the captions, like for the episodes, like episodes 1 through 12, like do you translate all of the captions?
I mean, yeah, I do all the sub. So I get the scripts and I put the translation, and then there's someone else that times them to create the subtitles.
Mm-hmm. I see.
Yeah.
And another, these are like childish questions. Do you get to see the anime like before it comes out? Like how far before, if it does, or if you do?
Generally, so it depends on how well organized the production studio is. Some anime, I will get the Japanese script that's used for dubbing and the video a week in advance, at least a week in advance. Usually I'll have generally I'll have the scripts for the episodes several months in advance. Video, I'll get, day the episode airs, next day get the video for next week's episode. If it's a nice, well-organized company that's on top of everything.
Mm-hmm.
This does not always happen. There are frequently times when the video comes in less than the day before. And I have one show that I worked on, Big Order, was very bad in this case. I was starting from episode 4 onwards, I think. Mm-hmm. I was working with animatronics, so the animatronics is basically the rough sketch line art version of the video that they use for dub recording, where there's no detail in it other than you just have the rough shape of the characters moving around, basically. I would be working off that 3 days before air, and the final video would come in maybe a day, maybe hours.
I see.
Yeah,
I mean that's where like you have like kind of everyone's like working together in synthesis, and like the like yes and no, and
yeah,
I can see like the the animation staff is pressed and whatnot, and it's just kind of a nightmare for I think like the people on like the I like the labor, like the more like labor intensive side, like not the planning side, but just like the
yeah.
actual work, the
Actual
animation
people
and
hand
whatnot.
drawing,
Yeah, and we're like, and I can imagine, yeah, it can get
and it's a lot
pretty
of
rough
frames
there.
you gotta draw and a lot of detail depending on.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, yeah. I think anime goes at 20. It's 12 or 24 frames per second, if I'm not mistaken, or around like
I want to say
13.
I want to say it's 24.
Yeah, most
but I
film and
think,
TV is 24.
yeah, I want to say it's 24, but they also use a lot of different. But anime uses a lot of different tricks with like panning or like still backgrounds and moving mouths, where it's not quite. You're not really animating the whole frame.
Yeah. So like you're getting, like yeah, so you can have some, tricks, some like, still things, but it's generally like yeah, you get like you get thousands and thousands of frames like per, episode, and yeah, all of that it's hard, it's not
Yeah,
easy stuff, and what you get, it really is a work, it really is art, and so I do think like yeah, acknowledging, I think it's invaluable. Well, yeah, invaluable in terms of.
yeah. No, I don't
Sorry,
begrudge. I don't begrudge any of the studio members that are, like you said,
yeah,
working the long hours and overtime to get that video out on the day it airs. And,
yeah,
like,
yeah, 100%. Yeah, that I'm not saying that you're what's it called. I'm not saying that like I'm not saying that you're saying anything bad, but not bad, but yeah, like it's yeah. I think everyone should kind of appreciate where that's coming from. Where everyone, yeah, where it's all coming from. But yeah, it's a tough world in that in the whole industry. I can see, but like and for people who are like maybe getting into like I hear that sometimes people have like jobs on the side of being an official translator, and that like since it's a lot of freelance stuff, I know if I recall correctly, most people aren't on salary. They have a side job, or like is it
generally speaking, pretty much everyone in the industry is freelancer. Almost every person's paid by the project. I mean, even I like I have a salary with MangaGamer for sort of the management and like marketing work, but like that's only half of my earnings. Like the other part is the project pay, and that's still very much on a project by project basis. I get paid when it's done. Even with Crunchyroll, I get paid by the episode. It's if for whatever reason I don't do work on a show for a season, that's a season I don't earn money from them. So it's
yeah.
And it's like it is very much, it's all freelance translation work, and the few people I know that don't have a side job outside of translation are generally doing translation with 5 or 6 different companies. So they're basically, their side job is just more translation.
Or their heads. Yeah, or they're like heads at their own company, because if I'm not mistaken, I think Steiner has his own like thing that what's it called? He has like he has like his own company, right?
Well, I think he recently mentioned on Twitter that he got hired to like do the project lead for a different company. I think it was P Cube.
Yeah, P Cube.
That's not his company. He doesn't
Oh,
own
okay.
them. they were a company that it was established before him, but
Yeah.
I think they pulled him on.
Yeah, and that's really I think that's like so yeah, it's pretty rare. I think it's fair to say that like like you can get kind of a salary kind of position from from the point of from mostly translation stuff.
Yeah, that's wild to me.
Getting a salary is rare, but it's like if you do good work and you turn the work in on time, you build that reputation for being able to do the work and deliver on it. You can pretty much guarantee that you'll get a steady supply of work from the companies you work with. So you can at least like I said, that's why a lot of people do have like 5 or 6, and they make it work perfectly fine with doing that. But it's like
Yeah.
trying to get it out of one single company is a challenge.
Yeah, that's crazy to me because like from reading and listening to a lot of translated stuff, translation seems really hard. So it's strange that something that would require such a high degree of skill, just it's not reflected in the financials.
You have just said the complaint that pretty much every translator in the industry voices on the regular. But I mean, the reason is just sales. I mean, for better or worse, this is entertainment. A lot of people don't feel the need to pay for entertainment, don't feel the need to buy entertainment. If the manga's not moving volumes, the publisher doesn't have money to pay the translators. If the games aren't moving copies, the company doesn't have money to pay everyone working on it. And that's kind of what it comes down to is, every company is trying to keep their books balanced so they can continue to do business.
Well, I imagine there's also a part of it is that I'm sure translation is like a passion-driven industry where most people are translators because they really want to be translators. It's sort of like how in the programming world, the passion-driven people go to game development and they get paid shit, whereas the people who are smarter usually go to like cybersecurity or something like that and make a lot of money.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue. It's hard to like unionize and fight for a higher wage when there's like 10 people coming up behind you to be like, I'm willing to do it for dirt cheap because I just want to be able to work on this thing.
Yeah. And
but
it's like
whether or not those 10 people behind you are any good is a different question. But point of the fact stands that like that's still your competition.
Yeah. It's an industry I think that probably needs to be like, I'm not gonna say like it needs to, I think there needs to be probably more once like translation for like VNs and anime, I think as like more of like a, I guess, grows as a career option. I think maybe at that point we might start seeing some kind of like a push to unionize and whatnot. But it's gonna take a while, given how because even now like anime is still like Western consumption is still like relatively it's not big enough I think to warrant that.
And I mean I will say this, like, well, like while we are here talking about how the wages are not the greatest, like they are actively improving. They have actively gone up. I know at our company we have increased our rates, several times in the past 5-10 years. And, it's the, kind of the flip side to everyone being in the industry and everyone being freelance is that everyone talks, and whether it's under NDA or not, everyone kind of shares the rates that they're getting from different companies. And so as long as you're kind of keeping in touch with and like on the up and up with the rest of the your fellow translators in the industry, it's kind of, it's not that hard to get a good idea of what people at one place or another are paying and being able to use that to your advantage to leverage a better deal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. You know, and I think, and I'm also seeing something where it's like, you know, if I'm not mistaken, where it's like everyone, since it's a super like more like passionate industry, like visual novels being like, you know, a passionate industry, it's I feel like you have more like of a connection, like, you know, it's more, I think maybe it's, this is a weird thing to say, less corporate, I don't know, in terms of like
Yeah.
people, there's a more of a, like, there's less people, so more people are, it's more like tight knit, so it's more, people are more
Yeah.
understanding of where different people are coming from, so it's less, you know, like, yeah, so
Yeah. Well, it's
that's
like I can count the number of people on salary at MangaGamer in if I don't count myself, one hand, and the number of people in the office is also less than one hand.
yeah, so
So
everyone,
it's like,
yeah,
there's plenty. Like it's not. Yeah, there's not enough people in any of these companies to develop a that kind of corporate structure that keeps the worker down.
yeah, which, like, it's like, I guess, yeah, so you know, you have your benefits and you have your drawbacks to it
Yeah.
being, you know, a small industry right now, you know. One day
Yeah.
MangaGamer might get like so big where they have, like, you know, dozens and dozens of employees.
And we have at least like 20, 30 different freelance translators working for us.
Wow. That's
That's what it takes to put out a project a month. You gotta have I mean, if you're gonna put out a project a month, you have to have at least a dozen projects running simultaneously.
that makes sense. Yeah, I'm thinking about it because, yeah, that makes sense. Some projects are longer, some are shorter, so you want to, you know, and then the release schedule is also one thing, and oh boy.
Yep.
Yeah, that's crazy. Um yeah, it's a lot just of yeah, wow. I do have this one question. This, I think this is the last question I have personally. Andrew, I don't know if you have any other questions that or topics that you want to bring up, but um I have this written down, and this is in our DMs. Are there any mistranslations in popular media or products that you've noticed and have found amusing or problematic in certain media? Like, just a very funny example, or yeah,
So I think it's safe to talk about it since this episode has aired, but like I said, I'm working on Jujutsu Kaisen, the anime, and there are numerous terms that I and Crunchyroll that I am fighting for, and that Crunchyroll is fighting for with the production committee on my behalf, because the original mistranslated quite a few, and like, to be fair, like, I give the original translator leeway. You know, he's working on the original manga. It's licensed. It's Shonen Jump. It's licensed by Viz. I can't imagine he's more than like a book behind the original release. So he probably just did not have the sheer breadth of context that I do now that I'm working on, the anime, which is many, many volumes behind where the manga currently is.
right,
So, like, one example from Jujutsu Kaisen is like, uh, in the Viz's translation, Gojo's attack is, one of his attacks is hollow purple, and the like, I understand where it comes from because of the kanji. The kanji for it, kyo, can be hollow when it's used on its own, but as they explain in the Gojo Past arc, which is recently aired, it's meant to be the kyo for kyoshiki, which is imaginary numbers, because it's
oh,
basically him generating imaginary mass by slamming his two positive and negative versions of infinity together. So it's complete bullshit, but Gojo is bullshit. But it's that's it's clearly a mistranslation. Like, this is not supposed to be hollow. There is a explicit explanation here in this arc, in this scene, in this manga, that it is that the whole terminology is derived from imaginary space, imaginary numbers, imaginary mass, but Vizju's hollow purple. So I can't remember if imaginary purple actually made it into this season's subs or not. But that's one of the mistranslations that I have noticed, and I have and there's plenty of others in Jujutsu Kaisen that I probably shouldn't talk about because they're still in the air and being fought over.
I see.
Yeah.
And okay, I do remember. So this is actually just one last thing. And before Andrew, whatever you want to do, whatever you want to say, but I remember at the panel at Anime Expo, I can't recall. Someone said that there's an exact joke, some kind of joke that you put into the translations that you make to know that this is a translation, that people can be this is a Kouryuu translation. Do you remember?
No, that wasn't me. That was our editor Paul.
Oh,
our editor. He was on the panel with us. That was him. He was the one that said yes, he always tries to slip this phrase in it. The first editor that worked for us, basically did the same thing. One of the Nukige that he was working on, touching up, they used the term pork sword, and he liked it so much that he tried to slip it into every other game that he worked on if he could. So yeah,
I see. What are these? What are the common? Are there any phrases that you like to slip in? Or
I'm trying to think if there is any that I frequently use, because I'm usually so focused on the original text. And I wouldn't be surprised if I've slipped in more than a few y'alls, because from Maryland, basically south.
Yeah.
But
well, y'all's gotta be used more, I think. 100%. That's an underrated word. Underrated as hell.
Yeah.
But yeah. I use it all the time, and and it's good. But yeah. And it can also be used to convey a more countryside-esque character and whatnot. But yeah, that's so if you see a y'all in there, it must mean that it's a Kouryuu translation. So obviously
there's probably others that use it too.
I know. I know. Yeah. Well,
like I said, I don't think I've never intentionally. I don't have a phrase that I intentionally try and put in my translations. I'm sure if you had ChatGPT analyze all my translations, it might be able to tell you one or two. Yes, this is the most frequently used phrase in all the translations Kouryuu's done, but I do not have the processing power to run through all my translations and figure out what that would be.
Yeah. All right. Well, Andrew, do you have any other? Do you have any questions? Anything?
There was one thing I'm curious about. So, every so often when I'm reading something that was Japanese to English, I'll see a phrase or a topic of conversation that seems just so fundamentally Japanese that it just doesn't have any real way of representing it, not even kind of in abstract. And it's a lot of times it seems like the translator just kind of give up, where like a common example I see is when a character uses a weird kanji in their name. Or I recently played a game where one of the characters' personality traits that
like light using like light, whereas kanji is the kanji for the Japanese word for light, hikari, and it's actually like the furigana over it is the English light.
Yeah. Or there was a game I played where one of the characters would use boku instead of watashi, and that's just something that again doesn't have an English representation. So there were just lines where the characters were pointing out, "Hey, isn't it weird that you use boku instead of watashi?" So like, do you ever run into those times where you're just like, "I can't translate this. This is impossible."
Yes. It's like I said, those happen. Those happen more frequently than you would like, and it all comes down to just doing the best you can. It's something that I always tell like myself and my others. It's like the process of translation is the futile pursuit of perfection. You will never you must always strive to achieve like the best, the most perfect translation you can, while also understanding that it's absolutely impossible to do so.
Yeah, just because of, of the semantics and whatnot of all of that. And something that that actually brought up is, are there times when like a word you can just like invent an English word or something to just be like, to fill in something like maybe like a word that would kind of like have there been like attempts before in translation, just in general, like in anime and VN and whatnot, to like coin words, like to just actually just like make up a word, like, derived from like Latin or something, to just represent something, because it's like so hard like to translate, be like, okay, let's just make up a word that people will kind of get.
So that does happen often, not necessarily for the reasons you're suggesting. It happens when, like, if a lot of times, like the anime or the visual novel, the series, whatever, they will make up their own words and their own terms for things in that show, in that season. And if they don't have an official English for it already, that means you get to make up the new made-up term in English for whatever it's supposed to be.
Yes. My favorite, I like this is only slightly related. I love whoever works on the JoJo whoever works on the JoJo translations for the stand names. Can I really want like there's you're familiar, like, are you caught up like with part 7?
I've basically only seen JoJo memes.
Okay. So there's a stand name. So there's a stand name named Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap. And the Japanese version, or not the Japanese, so that's the Japanese, like, Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap, like, because there's a JoJo fighting game, and that's a stand in there. In the English translation, it's called Filthy Axe at a Reasonable Price. I want them to keep that in the English like the official English translation for the anime. Like I want like this translation to carry over, and then for the and then for just the main voice actor for Johnny, just say, or not Johnny, like the guy who has the stand. Johnny doesn't have the stand, but this guy, my stand, the Filthy Axe at a reasonable price. Like,
but you're giving up the alliteration there, man.
Why
would you give up such sweet alliteration?
Like, I mean, it does add another level of dumb joke to it, since, I mean, obviously Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap is, a reference to this.
Yeah, speaking of JoJo, like, jokes and memes that people have translated and that don't quite translate is the Daga Kotowaru, which basically like, yet I like, but yet I refuse.
Yeah, I know. In the official English localization, I just looked this up, of All Star Battle, Dirty Deeds on Dirt Cheap is referred to as D4C. So basically, yeah. Oh, okay. So the actual phrase, yes, is time to perform some dishonest acts at a fair and reasonable price. Instead of just saying the stand name, just say my stand. Time to perform some dishonest acts at a fair and reasonable price. Can do X and Y and Z because, like, yeah, it's just like, it's like why I want to hear. I don't want to hear because one of the things that have happened also for like part 5 and 6 of JoJo's was the so the main character, you know, like Giorno, his stand is oh my god, wait. I should know. Golden Experience, right? So instead of Golden Experience, they say Golden Wind. I'm like, that's the name of the part. No, why are you doing that? I don't know, and then Stone Free, it's Stone Free, but then they say Stone Ocean, which is the name of the part 6 part. I really like, why? Why would you? I don't know. Like, I feel like you kind of lose some. Like, I don't know what it is. It just it's just a little bit like off. I don't know what. Damn. I'm just like, yeah, JoJo. That is like the one anime / manga that like just like that is my biggest like annoyance that I understand they can't use that.
I was like,
because it's a copyright in the West, like they can't use it, right? Like they can't
that's why they can't do it. Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
it sucks, but yeah, because the copyright laws versus West, copyright laws in U.S. versus Japan, yeah. We've had to make compromises on terms and things like that a couple of times in our games too, because of just wanting to stay on the right side and avoid issues with that too.
Yeah. And then like, go ahead.
Sorry, this is a bit of a tangent, but one of the whole talk of like the mistranslations and like not knowing things. So I had originally worked on the anime for Outbreak Company, which is just a Taku fan isekai anime basically, and the light novel had not been localized when I worked on the anime, so I did my best. The sheet, the scripts that I got just had the katakana for the magic spells, which were they sound like a foreign language, and it wasn't until one of the editors for MangaGamer, who ended up also being the editor for the Outbreak Company light novel, was asking questions about it and pointed out, like, showed me part of the light novel, and it's like when you can see the kanji that they're using in the light novel, it made it super clear that the quote-unquote foreign language that they were using for the magic spells was English backwards. So instead of like the attack would be like Storm Fist, and it would be said like Sifmwats. Because they just took the English for the attack and spelled it backwards. And that was how they got the language for their magic spells in that series. And it's like, that's one of the mistranslations. It's like, I didn't know that going into the series. That's
well, how could you have, realistically?
Yeah, I mean, if they had the kanji in the Japanese scripts, I might have been able to pick that up. But I just had the katakana, so
yeah. And I imagine on their end, it's hard for them to know. It's like, okay, what do we give them to help them give the best translation? They may not know that the katakana wasn't enough for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, is there anything else, or do you have anything else, Adze / Steven? Wait, Andrew. Wait, shit. Can't forget.
I genuinely don't know where.
Right name.
I don't know where Steven came from. Like,
who's Steven? Can't. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's just funny because I just like, I don't know why. I think what it might be, I think I've had it it was probably backlogged in my head somewhere. I just said it for some reason and then it just stuck. But yeah. Yeah.
I
Now
think
there's
it's
going to
like
be
a rule that he has to, at one point, usually before we record, he'll end up calling me Steven, even though it's not even close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyways, yeah. Well, I think I think that's about it for the topics and whatnot. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, it's been great.
I was glad you could have me.
Yeah, it was really awesome. We could it would be awesome to for us to come back and make another episode together maybe sometime in the future. I think that could be fun if there's another if there's a topic or something else,
I'd be down.
Yeah,
Cool.
that'd be awesome. Well, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, anything you want to plug? Tell people where to find you. Anything like that?
You can find me. I'm on Twitter as Kouryuu with an underscore after the U. MangaGamers, obviously at MangaGamer.com. We're also on Steam. You can pick up all of our games on our website, all of our Steam-approved games on Steam, and we should be having Higurashi Ho come out soon, the Ho Plus chapters. As soon as we hear back from Steam, we'll have more information on that, but if you're listening to this podcast, know that you can look forward to that in the next few months.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I mean, yeah. Well, yeah. Awesome. Well, we'll call that a wrap. See you guys next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, that was fun.